Alright, let's get started. I can't say that. That's Angus's line. Let's make something. Righto, so today I want to make a holder or a selfie handle for this mobile phone that that's recording me now. And what I'm going to use is this camera rig that I've had for a while. Just excuse the toys. I have a granddaughter now, who is awesome, by the way, and also very cheeky. Come on, Millie. You'll get stuck. Come on. And what I want to do is I'm going to use one of these handles here, and just going to take that off. And I'm going to use that as a selfie stick for my mobile phone. And I want to make up a bracket to mount the mobile phone across this way, and just something that's screwed on here, slip over this bar here, and just have the phone sort of sticking at the front, if you like, on the face of it. How do we do it? Is that better? So then I can just record myself and have something comfortable to hang on to. So that's the plan for today. And I'm going to use Blender 2.79 because I've been testing Blender 2.8 and I really don't like the implementation of the Boolean solver, which is BMesh, and the fact that they've removed carve from the Boolean modifiers. So I'm sticking with Blender 2.79, and I think for this video what I'm going to do is just talk about lots of stuff that's been happening while I've been doing things, and even projects I've been working on, like this shoe here. I had to do an advert for this shoe and actually physically model this shoe in 3D, and I'll show you a bit of that as well. So there'll be a few things I'll be talking about, as well as there'll just be a few things I'll be talking about, and as I go along and think of them, I'll bring them up. And I thought it'd be easy just to make one big video, then split them up into separate little videos that you can watch, if you find them. I'm going to keep them all contained in this one video, so I may ramble a little bit, but I'll try and edit it so it's not so painful for you. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so here we are in Blender 2.79. As I said, for modeling at least, I'll be sticking with Blender 2.79, but when I'm animating or doing character work or commercial work, for character animation work, I'll be using Blender 2.8. But for 3D printing and 3D modeling, I'm definitely sticking with 2.79. So you can still get Blender 2.79b by going to download Blender here on the blender.org website, and come down to near the bottom here where it says previous versions. We'll click on that, and it'll take us to this page here. So Blender 2.79, don't get the nightly build because that doesn't have the carve Boolean modifier in that build. You want Blender 2.79b. So I'd grab a copy of that, even just to keep for yourself. You can always get it. Blender will always keep the previous versions available for you to download, but I just keep a copy for myself and use Blender 2.79 primarily for 3D printing or creating 3D printable models. Alright, let's have a little look and a bit of a think about this particular object. Now I'm going to just take some measurements. So I think what I want to do is just keep a square shape down here, just keep it really simple, but have a cylindrical cutout all the way through that square shape to fit over here, and then have just a hook shape that's going to fit over my phone. Don't know if you can see that, but that'll just clamp it into place once I pull down or screw down on here. So I might make it two pieces where one piece slots into the other, and just tightening it up will clamp the phone into place. So let's have a look and see what we've got. So I'm going to use my trusty calipers to measure up. Now it's reading at 14.7 millimeters, so it's a 15 millimeter rod, so 14.7. So if I make mine, I'll just give it a little bit of slack. I want to go on easy, so I'll make it 15.2 will be the diameter of the inner hole of my mounting piece. I'm going to make the outer dimensions. I'll make it 25 millimeters in both directions, this way and this way. And my phone is, with the cover on it, the protective cover, it's 78 millimeters. So we got 25 by 25, 78 and 15.2 millimeter inner diameter for the hole. So let's just start with a cube. I usually have my interface laid out like this so that when I'm making something larger I can gauge how it's going to fit into my print volume, but we don't need to see that. I'll also turn on screencast keys so you'll be able to see down here what I'm doing. And let's add a cube. Cube is 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. Now by default Blender's measurement units are in meters. I change them to centimeters because when I'm working on items or parts I'm making, the meters is just too large, so I just change it to centimeters. So if we have a look at my settings here, I've changed my length to metric in the units. Unit scale is set to 1, and yes, my grid floor scale. So under the display in this numeric panel, which is available pressing N on the keyboard, will bring this up. So N hides it, N brings it back, and under the display tab, if I just press Control click, left click on that display item, it just closes all the others and leaves this revealed. You can see I've set my scale to 0.010, and that will just bring my whole world down so that instead of my object being 2 meters across, it would be 2 centimeters. So if you want to work in the same way I'm working in 2.79, Blender 2.79b, then change your grid floor scale to this as well. So now I've got this 2 centimeter cube. I'm coming back up here to item. Where's my transform? There we go. Open up my transform, and I'm going to set my dimensions to, I'll just go 25 millimeters in all directions. That didn't work, so we'll do it one at a time. 2.5 centimeters, 2.5 centimeters, and 2.5 centimeters. I believe in 2.8, if you swipe down and change them, they'll all update at once, but 2.79b. Okay, so what's just happened is I've just spent a fair amount of time making this up and thinking that OBS was recording, which it was, but it was just recording a blank screen. So I might go back and redo this, show you how I did it. I don't really want to. I'm just sort of running out of time. So I think for this one, I'm just going to have to explain what I did, and that was just create 2 cubes, 2 20mm cubes made them 25 millimeters to fit onto this. So this shaft, I need a 15.2 millimeter hole to cover this shaft on here. I'm going to give it 25 millimeters outside dimensions as a cube to go over this shaft, and my phone will mount onto this like so with this bracket I'm designing here. And I've just designed it as two pieces so that one slips inside the other, and there's room here for the two pieces to slide into each other. It's very frustrating. I'm very sorry that that didn't record. If I get time at the end, I'll redo this to show you what I did. I'm just going to select those two pieces and make them separate pieces so you can see how that's going to work. Both of those will slide over this shaft and then clamp down onto the phone. Now I need a smaller hole at the top here because this is only needs a 7 millimeter hole on the top here to put a nut onto. So I'm going to have to put some geometry into here, just building in another cylinder, which I'll do that now. So I'll create a cylinder. I'll make it 18 millimeters diameter, and I'll make it have a depth of I'll make it 5 millimeters, and we'll press Alt G. I'm going to snap it to the top of this. Turn on my vertex snapping tool, GZ. Well, now that's snapped in there. And I'm also going to create another cylinder, and this one will have a radius of 3.5 millimeters to give me a diameter of 7 millimeters, and depth will be, I'll make it 10 millimeters. And Alt G, snap it back to 0, and I'll take it up there, and this will be, oops, turn off my snapping tool. I'm going to grab these two pieces, just focus on those. It's just the / key on a numeric keyboard will focus on what you've got selected, and / will take you back to where you were. So I want to take this piece out of this and then boolean this into the other piece. So let's, is there an easy way of doing this? Or another way? I think this might be a better way actually. We'll go back out. I'll move them to another layer for now, so they remain in position. And what I might do is put some geometry in here. First I'll see if I can join these two together. Yep, that'll do, that's fine. We'll do the same here. Just pressing J to join those. So now I need to scale them to 0 on the Z axis, SZ0, and same with this one. Okay, now I need to bring them both down to snap to these vertices so they're back where they were. And they're a bit different, SZ0, they're the same. Turn on my snapping tool, GZ, and snap to these guys. Okay, so now that's got geometry there. So now I should be able to do a loop cut in here. I don't know why it's not joining up, but we'll have to do the same thing again. And join those. join those. There we go. Now I'm going to snap that to this plane here. GZ. Oh, okay. So now I've got some geometry which is holding. What I can do is delete all these faces. And I can select that and fill that, and select that and this and fill that, which means I now can remove these. Control X. So I've got a clean face on top there, and if you're looking through here, there should be a face on here. So now I can just boolean straight through this, and that will work quite nicely. Okay, so now I've got that. Well, I am going to make sure all my normals are facing in the correct direction. Something you should do when you've been jiggering around and putting geometry in and what have you. Make sure my scale is at 0 on that. I will now bring back my other pieces, or at least just this one here, and move that piece back to the first layer. That's going to be my tool for cutting out a hole in there. Okay, just make sure I'm still recording. I am, thank you. And I'm going to make sure the scale's applied to this cylinder, select this piece, add modifier, boolean, difference, carve, and select this piece as my tool for cutting, and that's now cut it straight through. So that will then sit on top here, and I can put a nut onto that and just lock it down. Okay, I'm going to apply that, and I can move that tool back to layer 4 so it's out of the way. So now we have our top piece which will lock down, and that should work quite nicely. And this is just a piece I've got in here to represent the phone dimensions. So it'll come down, whoops, turn off my snapping. It'll come down and just clamp down the phone like that, and I've got a bit of room here, so it will clamp down nicely. Alright, so I think we're pretty close to being ready to print. I would like to make this look a bit more attractive. That looks a bit ugly, I think. So just going to round off a few corners. I think I'll round off these ones here. Yeah, I think that'll be enough. Yeah, let's just see how that looks. Going to joint together and apply to scale and select. Now I want to get, this is going to cause me a problem if I try to bevel. So what I might do is, yeah, I'll put a loop cut through here and a loop cut through here, and then we'll take this vertice, switch to top view, and we'll join that across the top there, which means I can get rid of this one, and we'll do the same here. Join that, which means I can get rid of this one, because that's going to hold that in place. And I'm probably going to have to do the same down. Ooh. Yeah, I'll do it anyway. Just put a loop cut through there, loop cut through there, and I'm going to go Control 7 so we see the bottom view this time. Make sure I'm on vertices. Join across there. Yep. That's alright. Control 7. And go to there. Join that. Okay, and so now I can delete these two edges. And that's cleaner geometry. Do a save. So now what I can do is select these edges and I might use a modifier to do the... I was going to just press Control B and then permanently create a rolled edge on there. But if I use a modifier and use a bevel tool and use weight on these edges, and if I give those a weight, see if I drag that, it's going to give them a 10 centimeter, it says there, but that'll be a different sort of scale to what I'm working on here. Let's make it a 3 millimeter bevel, and this is just giving it 100% at 3 millimeter. If I go 4, we should see a difference. No, looks like 3 is just max. Oh, got to clamp the overlap, that's what's happening. Okay, so there must be overlap here somewhere. No, that looks fine. So I could go 4.2 millimeters and still be fine. And I can also then up the segments. We'll give it 36. And you see it's now put a nice curve onto that shape, which is adjustable. I can go back at any time and change that. Now let's have a little look. I think that's going to be a nice bracket. Certainly going to be sturdy enough. My phone's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to just leave those edges hard inside there, so it's got a good grip. And yeah, I think that'll be good. So we'll print that. So that piece there, just double check everything. No, I was thinking about separating them, but what I'll do is I'll just duplicate that, move that to layer 5, so I can come back to it, make a change later, and apply this bevel now. Just looking at the sections, how many sections? I might update a little bit more. 48. Make it 72. Make it nice and smooth, and we'll apply that. Switch to object mode and apply. So now that modifier has been applied, I can deselect everything, link that, select that off as a selection, and move that apart. Now printing, I think it's going to be easy if I just print them in this orientation as this piece is here, and flip this one over. RX 180, and I'll make this piece, this plane here, the bottom. Going to move the cursor to selected, switch back to object mode and Control Alt Shift C, and we'll go origin to 3D cursor. I'll do the same for this piece here. Now this is not a tutorial like that I'm expecting you to follow along. This is just showing you how I do it, and you might pick up some little clues on how you can speed up your own workflow. Now if I press Alt G, that'll snap to the floor. Alt G, so will that, and I can print them as 2 separate pieces or 1 piece, or whichever. And I think we're ready to go. And that's our bracket for holding the phone on. So let's delete that. Let's take this out to Cura. I did try Cura, actually I'm still recording. I did try Prusa Slicer. I've been using Cura up to Cura 4.2, whatever it is now, and I did try give Cura Prusa Slicer a go, and I initially thought was very happy with the way it was slicing and the speed it was printing at. But then I did notice that I did a print in Cura 4 and a print in Prusa Slicer, and I'll zoom in and show you what's happening here. But for some reason Prusa Slicer doesn't hold the same fine detail that Cura does, and I don't know if you can see these sections in here. This is the SpaceX Starship, by the way, which I modelled. These sections here hold up in Cura, but they get lost in Prusa Slicer. and it's the same STL file that I load into both slices, and I can't find settings to increase the resolution of the slicing software, because the resolution, it's all in the STL file, all that information's in the STL file, but the Prusa slicer just sort of seems to just sort of disregard that fine detail. So this is the Prusa slicer, and this is the Cura slicer. You can see there's a fair bit of difference in detail that's been held up in Cura that's being lost with the slicer. And it's definitely in the slicing software, because I slice it and have a look layer by layer, and it's not there, it's just detail's not there, where it is in Cura. So if someone knows of a setting that will fix that, let me know, and I'll have another go. But yeah, I was quite surprised that I could not get Prusa slicer to hold the detail that I can in Cura, so I'm going to stick with Cura for now. So let's take this out to Cura. Sorry, it's Cura 4.4. I thought it was 4.2, but 4.4 I'm up to now. And just double check, make sure I'm still recording. Good. Now I'm going to export. I'll export them as separate pieces. So we'll go File, Export STL. Now if you come down here, I want to make sure my selection only is ticked. My scale is going to be 1000. My export scale, and I'm going to work on scene units, and I definitely want to have selection only, and it's going to apply any modifiers that haven't been applied. So we'll go selfie stick, we'll go part 1, selfie stick mount, export that, and we'll go File, Export STL, part 2. I'll print one at a time, just so I can see how it's going. Now, we'll import that. File. Okay. I'm going to want a bit of... I'll print it at 0.1. We'll go 0.16. And we'll do 4 wall lines, 4 walls for strength. Infill density, let's up that to 30%, again for strength. Printing temperature is 200, and no supports necessary. Tick that off. Alright, so I'll just scroll down, and you can pause on this screen if you want to see all my settings that I'm using in Cura 4.4. So that section, again pause it if you want to see what those settings are. This is going to my Cocoon Create Touch 3D printer, and that's the last section there. So let's have a look at this. We'll slice it. Oh, there's one other thing I do too. Select the part. I changed my scale because I did a bit of a calibration for test on my Cocoon Create Touch, and I just printed this little scale grid, which is 180mm from here to here on the X, and the same on the Y, and printed it out and then measured it to see if my print is 100% accurate. It's particularly crucial for parts that have holes at set distances apart. A little bit makes a big difference. So I've done that, and I found that my printer's out on the X and Y axis, and I need to set my scale to 99.45% on both those axes to bring it out at the correct scaling. So 99.45 on both those axes, and when I print that I know it'll be the right size, or the size as I modelled in Blender. So check that. Okay, slice. 2 hours 17 minutes, that's fine. Let's have a look. That's going to see if there's any issues anywhere. think that's looking good. Should print fine. Alright, that's good. So that's part one. I'll save this profile. We'll call it 0.16, not solid. 30% infill. So 0.16, 30% infill. So we've got that as a preset. So I've got a new project. Yes. And we'll open that second part. Scaling will be 99.45% on the X and Y for my printer. And what I'll do is I'll put this this file on my Patreon account. It'll be a free download, so you don't have to subscribe to the Patreon to get it. All you have to do is just go over to Patreon and just look for the post, and I'll put it up there. And just on Patreon, actually, this video will be going to Patreon before it's publicly released on YouTube, and I'm going to do that from now on, just a couple of days before it goes to YouTube. The Patreon patrons will get to see it a few days earlier. So it's just a little bonus for my one Patreon who's supporting me over there at the moment, and that's Brian. Thank you very much, Brian, for your support. And yeah, so I've already got about half a dozen models on there to download. I'm going to put more models on there. There will be free, no subscription or no Patreon subscription support models, but there will also be models for my Patreon supporters that they just have exclusive access to those to download and print. So, but anyway, let's get back to this. I've changed the scale. Let's slice that. All my settings should be the same as before. Slice that. And we'll just do a little check. All looks good. Yeah, this is the top, so it's a smaller. Should print nice. Alright, we'll save that. And we're ready to go to print. So let's head over to the printer. Actually, I think this is going to work out well, this system. So I can show you stuff that's been happening as I go, because like in this instance here, you can see this, all these bits of filament. Just this roll that I've got of it's the Cocoon Create PLA. I'll do a print, and then the next day when I come back to the printer, it's snapped off, and it just keeps snapping off into pieces. It's weird. It prints okay. It'll do a run and print no problems, but then overnight it just snaps off into pieces, and I've got to then remove it out of here and load more filament. The problem is I've got loads of this filament, and yeah, it's the only filament I have, which is a Cocoon Create filament. So I suspect it's the filament. I don't know if it's just an aged batch, because it's very stiff and it's tightly wound onto the spool. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm keen to try some different filament and see if that's going to be any different. Alright, so let's load up this SD card and get a print going. But first, I need to fix this filament issue. So quick menu, that's not the one. Change filament, remove filament. Go set to 210 degrees, and while that's warming up, I might just show you my settings for, well, the G code, the start and end G code that I now use for this printer. Yeah, so my G code for, let's see if I can find where it is. Manage printers, machine settings. Okay. So you can see now my start and end G code is pretty basic, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I just find it's just a much more efficient way of finishing a print and starting a print. It's just a lot quicker than the G code that came with this printer, and I'll show you when it's printing and where the bed starts and finishes, and yeah, I like it so much better the way it's set up now. So I'll put this up on Patreon, the start and end G code, just as a text file, so that you can try it yourself, but try it at your own risk, because it works on my printer and it may not work on your printer. It may send the head off in different directions, so just be careful. But yeah, this is a G code I'm using, and I just find it's just so much more efficient. The filament is now extruding out of the print head, so let's go back over here and get that sorted. Now, I've been having some issues with this this touch screen, or this printer, of late. Nothing that's caused me any. Well, I've had issues with the extruder and nozzles, which I've replaced those. But when I hit print, you might see it here. Yeah, see this little glitch on the screen here? It started doing this a little while ago, and sometimes if I try, say if I print, we'll do part 1 first. Part 1, the selfie stick. There you can see here, the extruder temperature is not going up. The bed temperature is set, but the extruder's set to 0. So what I need to do is to I press stop to cancel the print. Print, go status, stop that again. Print, try part 1, and now see, now my temperature's reading correctly. So I don't know, it's just a glitch that's sort of crept into it. It works fine from there on in, but just every time I do a new print, I've got to do that to clear things. It's one of the things that is playing up a little bit, but it's not enough for me to worry about sending it in to get fixed or anything like that. I'm happy to live with that. That doesn't worry me, but yeah, it's just something that's crept into it. So what we'll do now is that's going to be ready to go in a very short order. So might just give that a quick go over if I've got time. It's 42 or 50 degrees, just with a bit of isopropyl alcohol. Got that in. Now you can see there, the G code I have, it just basically comes over and gets itself sorted, started, and then goes straight to print. And when it's finished, it positions the print head over here with this new G code, and just spits the bed out here so that the part's really easy to get off. Prior to that, what would happen is this print bed would go to the back of the printer, and your part's going to be back in here, and then the print head comes all the way up to the top. So I think the G code I'm using now is much better. I like it a lot. So let's let's print away, and I'll come back in a bit and we'll see how it's going. Righto, now that's printing nicely. Let's head back over to the computer and I'll show you that shoe project I was working on. Okay, so this is that shoe I was talking about, which is this one here. And as you can see, there's a fair bit of detail that went into making this shoe. I don't even want to count how many polygons or vertices are in here. Let me just... I had actually had to create a virtual set as well, and I'll show you the finished rendered look in a minute. let's just turn off the set so we can just focus on the shoe. And you can see there's a fair bit of detail gone into this. And for the final render, even though you can see the polygons here, I had them set up to a higher value for rendering, so they were all smooth. So as you can see, there's a fair bit of detail in this. Let's have a look. This is what the final render looked like, and the animation. It was just a small scene that got cut into a bigger commercial, a live action commercial. It just was a close-up of the shoe. And I really had to build everything on the shoe, including like recreate these textures and the leather texture and the webbing on the shoe here, which was a little bit of a challenge, but we got there. So yeah, that's one of the projects I've been working on. I don't think I'm going to have time to show you the steps I led up to, the steps that led up to this point, but it was basically I created a cube first and then a cylinder, used the carved Boolean modifier to remove this geometry out of the cylinder, and then created this piece here, which was just a piece to cut out a slot shape so that the two parts can move independently. And I put it's just a flat plane with a solidify modifier on it, and you can see that if I turn this modifier off, it's just a flat plane, that's all it is. And so then I used that to Boolean this into two parts, which gave me this shape. So that's all I did for that there. I will do another video recreating exactly what I thought I was recording earlier, but I'll do a different model. I'm not going to have time to do this today, but we'll do the same format on another model, and I'll run you through all the steps I used to create something like this, so you won't miss out. But yeah, for now, I'm sorry that I lost that footage. Well, I didn't lose the footage. I thought it was recording, but it was recording a black screen, so it's got my voice, but no vision. All right, let's see how print's progressing. So that's it. So really, all I have to do now is just wait. I'll print the second piece once this one's finished printing, and come back to you once the part's ready to go. So this is the final product, and I must say I'm really happy with the way this came out. The print finish is really nice. The tolerances are all perfect. I can't fault that. Everything fits together nicely, and it's come up really well, and it functions fantastically. When I put a phone in it, I don't have to back the knob all the way off. I just have to loosen a little bit, slide a phone in, and it's good to go. I will show you that in a tick. It'll be one-handed because I'm holding the camera with the other hand, but at least you'll get an idea of how it goes together. So it just slips together. I did model a knob for this nut at the top of the unit, and I will play that video at the end of this. So if you want to see how I modeled that nut, stay tuned for that. I was originally going to have a captive nut that was embedded in the knob. Just pause the print, drop the nut in, and then keep the print going. But in the end, I decided for the simpler approach, and it works fantastic. Works really well. I only have to back the knob off a little bit to slide the phone in, and it just works fantastic. So overall, I'm very happy with the way this works, and I've been using it a lot, and I will be using it in future videos, and for this and some of my other channels. And I was very happy with that. So hopefully you got something out of this and you found it useful. Thanks very much for watching. Again, stay tuned if you want to watch how I modeled that knob, and look for more videos like this in the future. Thanks again, and bye for now. Now that I've finished printing the holder for my mobile phone on this little selfie stick setup, I need to make a knob for this square nut that's on top of the actual mount. So I'm just going to do that now. We'll just model a small knob, and I've been thinking about how to make that and how to do it, and I was thinking of having a captive nut set up for this knob, and printing it and then stopping the print, dropping the square nut in, then continuing the print. But I don't think I need to do that. I think what I'll do is I'll just create a knob which will be about a centimetre tall, and it'll be circular with a bit of grip on it, but the top will be open and it'll be square shape inside the actual knob. So I can just drop the nut down into it, have about a millimetre base on the knob, and that will work quite nicely. But you'll see what I'm talking about when I start modelling. So let's start modelling this in Blender 2.79. First thing I'm going to do is to create we'll work on this layer, which is layer number 5. If I mouse over, you can see down there it's telling me it's layer number 5. So we'll switch to that layer, and I will measure up this nut that's on top of this mount, and the nut is, I'll use my calipers rather than that small ruler. The nut is 11 millimeters by 11 millimeters. Now, I don't think that hole in the center of that nut is exactly in the center. It looks to me like it's slightly offset. So what I'm going to do is to just give a little bit of clearance around the sides of that nut to ensure that, you know, if it is a little bit off center, it's still going to fit in there all right. So I'm going to make, I'm going to say, if I make it 11.5, the actual square shape inside the knob to hold that nut, it's going to be 11.5 by 11.5 millimeters. And I think I'll make the outer diameter of that knob, I'm just going diagonally across the nut there to make sure. I'll do that again. Yeah, so I'm just measuring diagonally across that square nut to make sure I've got plenty of room for my outer walls. And if I make that knob, yeah, let's make it 21 millimeters. I think that should be fine. So it's quite a simple one. Just going to create a cylinder, and we'll give the cylinder I got 128 vertices, that's 128 faces around the edge of the cylinder. Radius is going to be half of 21 millimeters, so that's a 10.5 millimeters, and the depth I'm going to make it 12 millimeters, just to give us a little bit something to hang on to. So 12 millimeters. Okay, Alt G to snap it to the center. And now what I need to do is to make sure I've got, I'd say, a millimeter of base in the bottom of that. Should be enough. I'll make it 2 millimeters in the base of that. So let's create our shape now for the boolean to cut out of the center of this. We'll create a cube. I'm going to make it 11.5 millimeters by 11.5 millimeters, and Z can be 2. And this is going to cut out of this shape. I'm going to make this face the pivot point of this object. That currently is set to the center. So I'll go to faces. Actually, I'll turn on screencast keys while I'm working so you can see what I'm doing. And select that face, Shift S, cursor to selected, switch back to object mode, and I press Alt, Control, Shift C, and that's origin to 3D cursor. So now that 0 point or pivot point is now at the base of that cylinder. So if I press Alt G, it's going to snap that to 0. Now I can do the same with this shape. Shift S, cursor to selected, back to object mode, and origin to 3D cursor, Alt G. So now they're both at 0, 0. So now I can just nudge this up 2 millimeters to give me my inner floor of this floor, if you like, of this knob. So I'm going to G, Z to snap it to the Z axis and move it 0.002, which is 2 millimeters on my setup. And I went 0.002 because I have my if you come down here to your numeric panel, you'll see I have my display set to a scale of 0.010, and what this does is just by default, if I create a cube, it'll be 2 meters by 2 meters in Blender, and I want my cube to be default cubes to be 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. So I set my display scale to 0.010, which means that when I create a cube, it's 2 centimeters by 2 centimeters. Just that's the sort of scale that we're working with when we're working on 3D printers. We're working in centimeters, not meters, so I just do that by default. So now I have that shape there. Let's boolean this cube out of this cylinder. I'm going to add a modifier, boolean difference carve, or always use carve boolean modifier. Select my cube and hit apply, and I can delete that now. And that's the shape I'm looking for. So my nut will just drop in here, and when I twist it, it'll twist the nut, and it can't come out once it's onto the thread. So that'll be fine for what I'm looking for, because I never fully take that nut off when I'm adjusting this mechanism. I usually screw the nut up to about here, and then that's all I need just to slip my phone in and screw it back up, screw it back down again. So that's going to work fine for what I need to do. Now I need to put a 7mm hole in the base of this, so I'm going to create another cylinder, and its radius is going to be 3.5 millimeters. Snap it to the center, and I will just make sure I've applied the scale. It was fine, but just in case there's any issues on those two objects, because sometimes when you do a boolean, if the scale is not at 1 for each of these objects, then you can have issues. So, and what that means is, if I was to create this shape and then scale it to this size and then start boolean, I could have problems if I don't apply the scale. So we'll do another boolean operation, difference, carve, and select the cylinder. And you can see that's been cut out of there. Apply that, and I can delete that as my tool. So that's what I'm looking for. Now, to give it some grip, I might extrude some of these faces. And I wonder if I can select I was hoping there was a way I could just select every second face in the loop, but it's looking like I can't do that. Or can I? No. So let's see how this works out. I'm going to select, I want to create some ribbing on the side here. So let's see how this works out. I'm going to select 3 faces, skip 1, 3, skip 1, 3, and so on. And I'll go all around the edge doing that. Lucked out there, that works out perfectly. Okay, so with those selected, what I'm going to do is to click extrude region and just extrude those out. And that'll give me a little bit of grip there on the actual dial. That's probably a bit too much. So let's just back that off a little bit. And I'll go back to median point, S, Shift Z, and I think that's fine. So that will give me a little bit of grip to grip the knob when I'm turning and tightening. Alright, let's print that and see how it looks. So we'll take that out to an STL file, selection only, scale 1000, and scene units ticked, and we'll call this knob for selfie stick. Export that. Now with Cura loaded, let's open that file, the knob, that's it there. I'm going to adjust the scale to 90, where is it? 99.45% on the X and Y. You don't have to do this. This is just for my printer. It's a little bit out on its scaling, and this just corrects to make sure that it prints 1:1. And I'm going to print 0.16 layer height and infill. What's infill? I'm going to make 100%. I want this to be solid, no infill. Let's slice that. 28 minutes. And that's how it's going to look. Yep. So that's all holding up nicely. That should print fine. So I'll save that to file and print that, and I'll just show you my settings so that you can freeze frame if you like, and see what settings I'm using to print this particular piece. Okay, let's print it.